I think the moment that I sat down my first day and I started flipping and started moving the drawings across, I was hooked. That was it for me. And, you know, because I came at a time that was all hand-drawn animation, and it was sort of like the second wave or the third renaissance of traditional animation with Lion King and Mulan and everything else.
I started a long time ago working for Richard Williams Animation.
Richard Williams has written the Bible on animation.
It was an amazing way to start. You know, it's been just it was a fantastic education.
This is actually a true story, but my mother went into labor while she was watching Fantasia. During the dancing hippo scene, her water broke.
Is that for real?
Yes.
Wow.
Today, animation is everywhere, both on the big screen and on our small screens, tablets, phones and internet browsers. Today we see animation take form in all kinds of scopes, mediums and genres, and it's something most of us take for granted.
It captured my imagination, captivated me, and it made me fall in love with the idea that there could be a whole other world in the world that we live in, and made me want to become a storyteller so that I could capture that same thing.
I've always felt like with cartoons, we immediately walk in, it's like a stage play, you immediately walk in and there's a suspension of disbelief. You understand these are the rules of this world.
The visuals are super unique, and like you can do whatever you want with animation, right?
Things move, a line moves, and it becomes animated. It's given life. Like no other art form has that.
Modern animation as we know it began to appear prominently in the mainstream media from the early part of the 20th century, but animation was extremely costly and highly complicated to produce.
Animation, pretty much from its formation as an art form, has been commercial.
The thing with cartoons is that they're really effing hard to make.
Very early on, people said, this is really expensive.
You had a crew of people who did the storyboards. Then the storyboard artists had to give their storyboards to the keyframe animators. Those keyframe animators then had to go ahead and put in the key poses, you know, for a character. Then those keyframes were given to in-betweeners. Then the in-betweeners had to go ahead and put in all the in-between frames, you know, between the keyframes. And then all those frames had to go to the inkers.
Back then you had people that did ink and paint. They would actually ink the drawings on cell and then paint them, and then somebody had to clean the cells afterwards.
It was a laborious process.
It was just right from the get-go. If this is going to exist at all, we need to make money off it. So that sort of locked it in to a lot of very intense tropes, I think, and expectations of what an animation is. It was children's entertainment. It was successful enough that they could afford to do it, which is saying something to begin with. It didn't necessarily have this connotation of being children's entertainment until really the introduction of the Hays Code.
The Motion Picture Production Code, known informally as the Hays Code, was adopted from the 1930s and played a large part in heavily censoring American cinema for over 30 years. As a result, animation couldn't freely depict satire, monsters, violence, and was kept far away from sexuality and adult themes.
The way the Hays Code worked is it was a blanket thing. It was no skirts shorter than this length, no this, no that. When that Hays Code came in, that was sort of the first hole in the boat.
This is Flossy Cow. In 1930, she was free to walk naked with her udders exposed, as most cows do. In 1932, censorship as a result of the Hays Code decreed that she wear a skirt, and from 1939, she was forced to wear even more clothes and walk upright, like the lady she should be.
Disney sort of really took over, and they very heavily established what animation in the West is.
Walt Disney's animation studios produced both long and short form content which dominated the industry from the 1930s and played the biggest role in defining how animation was seen moving forward. It was around this time that the gentleman who later became known as Disney's 9 Old Men outlined 12 basic principles of animation that would become the foundation of Western animation technique.
Walt Disney really pushed it to do more. He's like, it could be realistic. It could be more exaggerated. It could be have more depth to it.
Animation was becoming more and more popular, with timeless classics being produced in the 90s like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid. But despite this, the production of animation content was almost exclusively for big studios with a lot of reach and a lot of money. Hundreds of animators were required to work on a single production with the use of bulky and expensive equipment.
We had this thing where it was like for testing our animation for production, we literally have to get a light table with a camera and a 3/4 inch deck, and it was this machine that you'd push, and you put a piece of paper down, you put glass down on that, you'd have the light shining through, and you'd shoot one frame. And the thing that was frustrating about that is, like, if I messed up, if I got 300 drawings into it and I messed up, I'd have to start all over again.
With animation content still being largely seen as children's entertainment, and with the process remaining as expensive as ever, studios had very little room for error or experimentation.
In a studio environment, my job is to make other people's jobs easier, more than it is to be an artist. It's to make the colorist's job easier, it's to make my art director's job easier, it's to make the line producer's job easier.
Because production costs were so high, studios had to successfully appeal to the masses on a regular basis just to break even.
Most animation doesn't make money. And that's kind of like the dirty little secret of the animation industry is most movies and TV shows don't make money at all. They're just designed to make and sell products. It's good and bad. You know, you've got lots of stuff in production, but it's also constantly being rebooted so it stays evergreen. They've got this formula that kind of works, that keeps their bottom line going, but it's not really building a market for them.
Things continued this way for a long time. The definition of what animation was capable of seemed set in stone and unattainable without a sizable budget. However, the close of the 20th century saw the introduction of something that would revolutionize humanity forever, and along with it, animation. And that, of course, was the internet.
The internet gave us a whole world of exciting new possibilities. So I guess this is a story of how it changed our lives.
All of a sudden, and out of nowhere, a platform for limitless international distribution was born, and there was little to no censorship.
Surf's up, see you on the net.
What if a kids show, because that's what animation is, right? What if a kids show was rude, is always the concept. That is still a hard thing to push in the industry, but with the birth of the internet and independently published animation is now more accessible. Now I think we're finally in a position to see that shift start taking place.
In 1996, a company called Macromedia purchased a company called FutureWave, and with it, a program called Future Splash Animator. They continued to develop the software and renamed it Macromedia Flash, and due to its vector-based format providing very low file sizes and its growing interactive capabilities, Flash quickly became one of the most highly used applications for web browsers.
The first things it had was like keyframing. Eventually they added sound, which was a big deal again on the web because there wasn't a way to do sound on the web. The key for it was, one, it was small, it would stream, so it could start playing before everything loaded, which again, not a lot of bandwidth, a big deal, and it worked across browsers. And again, this is like early days of browsers. That was a huge deal to be able to do this advanced stuff across browsers.
Millions of animations, games, and applications produced using Flash were engaging millions of people around the world.
The internet allowed short-form content to become popularized. It became, things became viral.
For animators, like individual animators, allowed them to reach such a huge audience. I mean, it was amazing.
The animation industry was pretty bleak at the time, right? There was no more 2D feature films being made. Flash started becoming more and more prevalent.
The stuff that was getting attention, that was like what's really pushing the web forward, it was almost always Flash stuff. It had a very, almost like a rock star culture community, right? It was a very tight-knit community.
Because of all this software and availability, we can do this now. We don't have to rely on the big studios.
Probably the single biggest contribution that Flash has made, and I'm sure people argue with me about this, but it's really about video. It made video possible on the web. like it probably 10 years earlier because of that. And so things like YouTube and Vimeo, pretty much any place that uses video, that was because of Flash.
Now, kids are growing up watching YouTube. I know a 9-year-old who, with an iPad, who says, my favorite games are Minecraft and YouTube. Just consuming independent content is normal for him. As consumers that want to be entertained, and they are seeing animation do things that they wouldn't have been able to see since the introduction of the Hays Code.
Flash took the web by storm and dominated the sphere of shareable entertainment and in particular animation content. However, in 2007, when Apple released the iPhone and sparked with it the era of smartphones, they at the same time rejected the Flash player, which resulted in many people expecting the imminent death of Flash and animation online.
There was a phrase that became sort of like a catchphrase that I heard a lot, which was Flash is dead.
Yeah.
And it was this sort of, it was said in a way that was just like, stop trying. We had to defend that why would we have to defend that? We're using it.
Not a lot of people understand the difference between Flash, the authoring tool, which is technically Flash Professional, but people just call Flash, and Flash, the runtime plug-in player. Most people, they're all talking about the Flash player, but it was that confusion that would make it really difficult for people using Flash authoring tool, where it's the best tool for them, but then they're going to talk to a client and they're like, I'm going to use Flash. There's just this like branding block almost. It's still one of our most popular programs. Tons of people are creating amazing stuff with it.
In 2016, they unveiled the newest evolution of Flash, renamed to Animate CC, delivering with it even more innovative tools for animators and support for HTML5, WebGL, and HD and 4K video rendering.
So over the past couple of years, we'd actually been rebuilding Flash, like literally from the ground up.
It's literally been this week. In the last few days, it's like the rebirth of Flash, essentially, and it's being well received. Because I think during that downtime, a lot of people who kept using the tool felt a little bit abandoned. And that's pretty natural.
Yeah. And they were. Like, let's be frank, they were not getting the same attention from us as they had in the past. Yeah. The reaction this week to the announcements has blown us away. And it's actually been way more positive than we anticipated because
you've dealt with negativity for so long.
Exactly. It's like a rebirth, and that's how people are accepting it. So that's really great. And the other thing is we have focus now too, like internally, on like, okay, we build the world's best creative tools. We need an animation tool, and we have that, and like, this is where we're going to focus our efforts on that. And with the platform able to output multiple ways, it makes it just so much more valuable to so many more people. Who knows, what platforms are going to come down in the future. We're Adobe, it's the big company. A lot of people see it as like a faceless corporation. But the reality is that the people who work on the tools, they're super passionate about this. And that's not just for Flash. Like, I'm on the Creative Cloud team now, so like across all the tools. Everyone here is just super passionate about enabling people like yourself to just create amazing things with it.
Now, I can't say for sure what lies in store for the future of Adobe Flash, now Adobe Animate, but I can say that with the ever-growing list of animation programs becoming more powerful and more accessible, and with an industry giant like Adobe building its resources and tools for animation, the future of independent animation is looking very bright.
Animation is seeing a new age of accessibility and innovation. It can be consumed and created by anyone on the planet. As a result, the big studios have been forced to adapt and innovate to compete with the new wave of creative freedom born with the internet age. In the past, animation studios were also heavily dominated by males, and gender equality and creative leadership roles was unheard of. Today, non-profit organisations like Women in Animation are playing an important role in speaking out for gender equality in the industry so that animation can continue to grow to be inclusive for all genders, both inside and outside major studios.
Back then, there were not that many women in the business. I think the big difference is that there are a lot of women studying animation today versus, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So our goal here is with Women in Animation is we're a volunteer advocacy group that was founded a while back, about 2.5 years ago, a group of us relaunch the organization, really to get more women into the business.
I think that's Gina Davis's line about like if girls see more images of themselves in different roles, they'll go, oh, I could do that. And so we're trying to walk that walk. And we're getting a lot of interest. A lot of companies are like, we really want to change this.
You know, they can make a difference in terms of content.
Today, no matter who you are or where you're from, you can access the unlimited possibilities of storytelling through animation. Technology will continue to become more powerful and accessible and affordable, and education is freely available on the information superhighway. And with all of this, the future holds a bright horizon for storytellers who have the next great tale to tell.
To me, I always believe as long as there's kids on this planet, there's always going to be animation. It will never die. It will never go away.
People have been saying the animation industry is dying since the animation industry started. You know, but now you've got more and more people that are creating new content, like new and interesting kinds of stories, not just some, you know, corporate manifest like go make a toy line, you know, make a toy animated series for that toy line. No, you get a lot of really fun, quirky animated series from people that really care about what they're doing. And I feel like that's going to happen more and more because those are the ones that are succeeding.
With animation you can create worlds unimagined by man. Things of unearthly size with 1 trillion eyes, or make stuff that is totally bland.
People from studios like Nickelodeon and whatnot, they have their eyes open. They are watching the internet. They are very familiar. They're familiar with you, they're familiar with me, they're familiar with all of our friends. Like, they're very familiar. I mean, these guys work for these major studios, but it makes perfect sense because a lot of people are looking to the internet for the next thing, you know, because even studios, I think the biggest draw for studios about the internet and about what we do is the overhead is so small. We are 1 person or 2 person studios, and they have these, you know, they've got elaborate offices with teams of people. They're outsourcing tweens to Asia or whatever, and it's just like, they're making these cartoons that in some cases get a fraction of the views that some of the stuff online gets.
It's our job as artists to be mindful of where technology is headed so that we don't get left behind, because it's easy to become replaced like that with technology. You know, there were people a long time ago that their job was just to do color corrections on movies. That job doesn't exist anymore because it's all done in Photoshop.
Where people used to watch stuff on a movie screen or on a television set, people are now watching on their phones or their tablets. So there's a lot more opportunity because there's so much different ways to distribute the material.
It's on your smartphone, it's on the internet, it's everywhere. So animation is redefining itself. It's not just for the big picture or just TV. I mean, animation is everywhere.
You know, we got to evolve. We're evolving. You know, we've gone through this in the whole history of art before, where even the illustrators back in the day panicked when photography came because they were doing illustration, but now photography was replacing that, so they no longer had to draw the men's hat or the things for the catalog.
Someone can go and take a really good photo of a landscape, and someone that paints a landscape might say, you didn't even have to make that come out of your hand. But they might just have a better eye for what makes a good image than that painter anyway.
You have a lot of people who pine for the good old days, you know, like it's just like, man, I wish it was still on paper, you know, all that sort of stuff. But like, to me, the technological advances in animation have made it so incredibly accessible. Like, not to sound like the old guy, but like, when I first started to learn, you know, you'd have to shoot everything on a Super 8, send off your film, wait 6 weeks for it to come back, and then you're like, oh, that's where I made the mistake. And then you would fix it. And now I'm looking at portfolios on a Cintiq that has all the software built into it, and I'm like, well, that doesn't really work. And the student literally has a chance to be like, voila! And you're like, oh my God. It was like no scanning, no paper, no ink. Like, it's just, it's a brave new world, and I don't know that everybody who kind of pines for the old days quite understands how magical a time it is now.
Being able to animate in your house has already changed the game, and we are all benefiting from that. And that's just going to become more and more intense.
You know, as film gets more influenced by like computer-generated imagery, that's a form of animation, right? So like, even if you have like a live-action film, you know, a lot of films are like 30, 20% animation now.
We've got to adapt. You know, there's going to be a lot of people here with a lot of talent that, you know, aren't necessarily going to be working in a studio.
Especially when it comes to things like virtual reality, which I think are going to be like really big in the future.
The competition might get more fierce because someone that's never drawn in their life can pop up and make something better than you've ever made, and you've been honing this your whole life. So it just means the pressure's on to be good at what you do, and that's fine. More competition is fine, because better art will be made.
Today, animation tools are more powerful than ever before, technology is more affordable, and the industry has never been more competitive. Animation is no longer just for children, and in a noisy world oversaturated with content and stimulus, animation has the power to transport the viewer into unlimited worlds with endless possibilities. Thanks so much for watching and supporting my content. Make sure to check out the other parts of the Tale Tellers mini documentary series on independent animation by clicking the annotations on the screen or in the description. And if you haven't already, make sure to like and share this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more art and animation content. Until next time, I'll see you later.